Hello, my name is Christina Finn, political correspondent with the Journal.ie. Today we're sitting down to talk to Housing Minister Darragh O'Brien.
I'm
Thanks for
delighted
joining
to,
us,
Christina.
Minister.
Thanks for the invite.
So housing has been firmly put back on the political agenda last week with that story basically about the Maynooth housing estate and a number of houses being bought up by the investment fund. That's dominated headlines. Maybe you would have preferred to be talking about the affordable housing plan that you launched, but pressing on with that issue at hand, how did we get to this point? You know, you had a bill about this 2 or 3 years ago. It was on the radar. This isn't new. So why is it taking so long for action to be perhaps hastily done at the moment this week, where we're looking to make some changes with that?
Yeah, I suppose, look, this issue of bulk sales of homes is one that's been going on for a number of years. I had it happen in my own area in Donabate just about 2 years ago. So actually, I think it was October, November 2019, I published the first piece of legislation in this regard to try to help that scenario. I've obviously only been minister for less than a year, but a number of weeks ago, actually, I flagged this well before Maynooth that we were working on measures in here in the department insofar as what we can do from a planning side. Because I think there's two elements to this. One is obviously, a finance issue, and the other is a planning issue. And I think all of us, what we want to make sure, and why I brought forward the affordable housing bill earlier in the week, is to level the playing pitch for first-time buyers, is to bring in measures that are going to help first-time buyers actually buy homes at an affordable rate, or indeed rent homes at an affordable rate. Now, whilst we're doing that, we obviously can't have a situation where we've large investment funds buying up family homes. That's not something that I want to see. I've said it a number of weeks ago, even before the Maynooth situation came to light, that it's not something I support, nor indeed in government. So we want to see that change. So we've been working on right through the weekend as well, in conjunction with Minister Paschal Donoghue and his team in the Department of Finance, to come up with measures that can help in this regard. Because I understand completely. I'm very angry to hear it. People are really annoyed about it. I think we need to make sure that we keep it in context as well, that it doesn't overtake. It is a small amount of properties, so we have an opportunity to deal with it, and that's what we intend to do.
And what exactly are we going to do about it? And is time really of the essence here? Because, you know, we've seen reports in the Sunday papers that I think housing bodies had been, outbid by 400 homes in the last 2 weeks. And I know there's been other reports of, moving that 30% ring fence up to 50%. But why should they have the option to buy any percentage of residential homes?
Well, I'm not writing anything off, Christina. It's just a little bit early to say exactly what we can do, because we're dealing obviously with the Office of the Attorney General and with Department of Finance. But as I said last week, I expect this week we'll have a suite of options. Some of it will potentially be around the percentage of homes that can be ring fenced. I've already done that actually by flagging the increase in the Part 5 provision, which is to make sure we have at least 10% affordable, 10% social. I want to see it go further than that. Fundamentally, this is about supply too. It's about making sure we use our own land. That's why we use state agency land. That's why the LDA, the Land Development Agency bill, is so important, that all of your readers will know there's some infamous sites all around the country that the state has owned that are sitting around vacant, and that can be put to good productive use by building homes for people to buy or to rent at an affordable rate. So there's good things that are happening. We won't be, pushed off course followed by really driving home the policy decisions that we need to make around affordable housing and the Land Development Agency. We'll deal with this issue too, but I would expect that we will have a suite of options within a matter of days, and that will be a mix of maybe legislative changes too. So as soon as we do, obviously we'll be letting people know that very clearly and outlining what the measures are and how they will help.
And there seem to be some reports or perhaps pushback from the Finance Minister in terms of the taxation issues relating to these investment funds or REITs, that there was some idea floated that perhaps the Finance Minister would prefer to leave those taxation measures till budget day in October.
Certainly.
That seems very far way off for people that are reading those headlines over the last
I can tell you, I've been working very closely with Paschal on this, and it's been working really well together. So I've had no pushback from finance. I think it's a whole of government response is needed to this. So it's not just, to be fair, it's not just either Pascal Donoghue or myself. It includes the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach and all our government colleagues. We want to get this situation rectified as best we can. And like, that's why fundamentally, Christina, on the housing side of things, where our whole focus is on building homes, our own homes, 9,500 public homes built by the state, delivering affordable housing as well for people to buy and to rent. Like, the state is the biggest player now in the housing market. It's not the investment funds. While sometimes it might feel that, and I get that, why people have been annoyed with what happened in Maynooth and in Tyrrellstown. But fundamentally, we're the ones who are delivering nearly up to over 40% of all the homes at the moment. And I want to expand that further by our affordable housing scheme that's going to give people a chance to own their own home, going to give people a chance as well to rent their own home long-term at an affordable rate, and continue to deliver public housing at a scale that hasn't been ever seen before. So we're going to continue focusing on that, and that's what our new housing plan, Housing for All, that we launched in July.
Just on the issue of the investment funds and the percentages that have been, the figures that have been going out, it was 30%, speculation of 50%. Can you confirm now that you're looking at any higher than that, or is it the 50% that you would most likely to go towards?
We're not ruling anything out. I've got to wait to see the options that they come back. And we obviously, what we do, we want to make sure it's implementable, and that it can have a pretty positive impact nearly immediately. So basically, that's I've got to wait till we get those options back. So I'm not going to set a percentage yet until I see what the real workable options are. Okay.
And Minister, you probably saw that over the weekend we ran a piece about housing issues where we did a call out to readers.
I did.
And we were inundated with people's stories. So we had over 90 readers' stories giving their experiences. It was quite a long article, but I think it was one that was worth the read, just to give the personal experience from people. And one reader in their 30s, they said, how can I be in the top percentage of earners of my age? I've saved a good amount from every paycheck for a decade and have no long-term financial liabilities, but I still am nowhere near home ownership. How is that not a system failure? And they were basically asking, what would you say to people like this person who at any other time in Ireland's history would have been able to buy a house, but now they can't?
Yeah, well, I'd say I know thousands of people like that, and that's why I've put home ownership right back at the centre of the housing debate. I believe in home ownership, and I believe home ownership is an honest and just aspiration for people to have, and it's one that should be supported by the state. And that's why I'd say to your reader, there's loads of people in his or her boat like that, working really hard with decent jobs, trying to save every penny or every cent that they have to build up a deposit, but can't get the mortgage that can help them bridge that affordability gap. And that's why I'm bringing forward, and why earlier on this week we published the Affordable Housing Bill, that there are real measures within that through this state-backed affordable homes, which is the first one. We launched a scheme in Lusk recently, house prices between 165 and 265,000. Then the shared equity scheme, which is going to give people a choice to be able to buy new homes in their area and allow the state, with the state's help, to take a small equity stake in their home. And these measures will work, and they will help your reader like that, because people feel despondent and they feel that they're working hard. They want a home to call their own, and I want to support that. So what I've done in a very short space of time, I think people would recognise since last June, July, when I became minister, is to prioritise this affordability measures. And it's the most comprehensive affordable bill that's ever been brought to government. And I actually hope other parties and independents will support it, because it does a number of things. It will provide a shared equity scheme to help people like your reader to be able to bridge the affordable gap. It will help first-time buyers, and with local authorities building affordable homes that they can purchase. It'll bring forward for the very first time a cost rental scheme, which has been talked about for years but not delivered, that we're going to have cost rental tenancies in place this year. And what are cost rental tenancies? Are basically below market rent, long-term tenancies supported by the state that just simply cover the cost of the development and maintenance of the apartment block that is being rented. So people can enter into long-term, secure, affordable rents. And the fourth thing that we're going to do is, for all new developments that are being built, is to bring back that 10% affordable that was there for years that was gotten rid of in 2015, which I think was a bad decision. So I'm going to have 10% social and then 10% affordable. And then the very last and significant thing for people will be using our own land better, which is why I have the Land Development Agency. And the Land Development Agency I see in cities like Dublin and Cork on their grounds delivering up to 90% affordable, 10% social. So these are things that will deliver not just in the medium term, but in the short term. And that's why I want to get these measures through by the summer, to actually, so people can see that they're working, and gives people hope that government's backing them, because we are, and I am as housing minister. I'm backing those first time buyers with real solutions because I want to help them.
On the issue of affordability, lots of criticism about that 400,000 mark. I know you've said that's not a target. It's more of a guide of what the affordable housing scheme is like. But what do you say of the criticisms? I suppose it hasn't got backing yet from a lot of organisations yet. And are you willing to press ahead with it and make amendments, or are you just ready to go on?
No, I think two things on the shared equity piece. That cap that you mentioned is a cap of 400,000, and in one part of Dublin 450,000. It's not a target in every area, and your readers will know this. House prices vary depending on the house type. You get a house from 200, 230, etc., right the way up. What we're saying is those caps acknowledge that those house prices aren't affordable. Okay, that's what it's actually doing. There's anything over that rate that basically you can't get into the shared equity scheme. So what we're doing is pitching these supports in a very targeted way at those who need them, to be able to bring on supply that is needed in this area, because it is a supply side measure. I think it will lead to more starter homes being built, and it's a very effective way of helping people. We've had similar schemes in Britain. Now our scheme has been changed and calibrated to focus on the Irish market here, but effectively what we've seen in Britain with a similar scheme, it led to a 14% increase in starter homes with less than 1% house price inflation. Now, I think we'll actually do better than that. We've targeted our scheme very well. And actually, we've had a lot of support for the scheme. I've welcomed the discussion around it. And I think your readers will know as well, it's the only scheme that's been published by any of the parties there. And this one will work this year. And the level of interest we've had from prospective first-time buyers has been absolutely phenomenal. So this is one of four measures, but all four will work. And we will obviously keep the scheme under review as it moves forward as well, that if we have to tweak it as we move along, we'll do that.
Minister, another issue I suppose that got a lot of prominence last week was the talk of long-term leasing, from these investors and councils and what role they might play. Malcolm Noonan, the Minister for State there, your junior, said that last week in the Dáil that leasing homes rather than buying them kept them off the state balance sheet. So basically, is the government trying to avoid breaching those EU financial rules, he said, by keeping that investment off the books? But I suppose a lot of people might ask, we have these rules around EU capital expenditure budgets that we're not meant to breach. But we've seen, I suppose, in the case of COVID, things can be done very quickly, rules can be broken. Is there any argument to make to Europe that the housing crisis is very serious for Ireland, and we need to breach those rules in order to ramp up our supply? Yeah,
there's certainly an argument for that, and we're dealing with European colleagues on a regular basis on that specific point. What I'd say is on leasing, our priority and our preference here under the government housing plan is actually to build our own homes, to build new public homes that the state's involved building on their own ground. And that's why even for this year, and it will be affected by COVID, and people don't understand because of the shutdown, we targeted, a new housing delivery of new build of 9,500. Leasing has been a small element, and it is something that we're looking at. It has been a way of delivering homes in some instances quicker because we have had a housing crisis. It's been there since about 2013. So what I actually said, and Malcolm Noonan in his response last Thursday, let the Dáil know that this element we are actually reviewing because our preference is to build new homes. But fundamentally, when we've 60,000 or so on social housing lists, we need to try to deliver homes as quickly as possible and recognise the fact that there's a crisis there. But our priority and our preference is always going to be to build, not to lease. And that's something that in the government's housing plan that we launch in July, Housing for All, I think you'll see a very clear direction in that regard as to what we want to do into the future. But right now, there's about 20,000 households their homes are supported through leased properties that the state are paying for. So it's a reality that's there, and we've got to support those households and their long-term leases. But fundamentally, as I said, our preference and our priority is going to be building homes.
And Minister, we also had an opinion piece that was up online today from Jen Gannon, and she was speaking particularly about, single people. So we've heard again and again from single people who say that it's impossible for them to buy in the system because it's aimed solely at couples. And I have to say, I did a call out for questions for this interview. I've done plenty of them over the years with ministers and asked for readers' questions, and I don't think I've ever got so many emails and concerns and stories sent in to me. I think I've had about 200 emails, and they're still coming in with questions, and a lot of them have to do with single people saying, back when their parents were buying houses, they were married at 24, 25, they have good jobs, but they still can't buy, and they still actually can't even rent somewhere in a city or even on the outskirts of some of the commuter belts because of the price, and they end up sharing with 4 or 5 people, and they're nearly the age of 40. What can you say to those people? Because I know we've had years and years of talk about housing and what we're going to do, but it seems like progress is slow on the ground for those types of people.
Yeah, look, firstly, what I'd say, things have changed in a number of years, no question. That people are, older when they're buying their first home, into their mid-30s now. Okay, people don't get married as young as they did, or they don't get married at all. We live in a different society now. So what I'd say to single people is, well, I'm not forgetting about them. And a number of the measures that I've brought forward are going to help. And they're going to be, it's the start of that help, because I'm not surprised at all, Christina, that you got hundreds of emails when you put out your request for questions, because I get hundreds of emails and phone calls every week from that same cohort of people. And that's why I'm so determined to make sure that we make a difference for them, because they're people who are working hard, paying their taxes and saying, well, what about me? So I'm going to make sure they're not forgotten about it. So in the affordable bill, particularly 2 things, if I could focus on. The shared equity will not exclude single people, by the way, at all. Okay. Fundamentally, the cost rental piece is really important, because that's going to be a real help for single renters as well. Okay. On the cost rental scheme, the first time we're going to have a national cost rental scheme. But the state-backed affordable housing on state-owned land, like the one I've mentioned in Lusk earlier on, with house prices starting at 165,000, we're going to have those estates at scale, and I've made sure that with those developments that they're designed for community. So they're not all your just 3-bedroom semi-Ds. They're mixes of different house types. And we're going to be very, very focused on that cohort, because they are, in fairness, when you have a family unit that's one person and a single person, they've one income. And it can be make it much more difficult for them to reach the level that they need to be able to secure a home. But I have that mix in our affordable schemes to make sure that different family types, singles and families, that are catered for. So what I would say to the hundreds of people that emailed you who are single and who are renting or living at home with folks is they're central to the work that I'm doing to try to fix this situation. We do need a little bit of time. Minister for less than a year, okay, but I think in that short space of time, people will have seen my bona fides in this regard. But that's why affordability is absolutely central, with the most comprehensive piece of legislation on affordable housing ever brought forward. And when we get this...
And is there any argument...
Sorry, I was just going to say, Christina, when we get this passed by the summer, that's what I intend to do, because it's urgent. We can move it on then, and we can actually get the schemes published and get people applying. That's what we really need to do. Start moving it on.
And is there any argument for there was a rent tax credit, I think, was abolished in 2010. Is there any consideration being given to that? Again, it helped a lot of people, I think, perhaps over a decade.
It did. It's quite a small help. That's what I'd like to expand the cost rental. If I could explain what the cost rental in real monetary terms means, that this year now we'll have 8 cost rental schemes across the country. So within less than a year, we'll have them open to people who are above the social housing limits. You're looking at a minimum reduction on market rent of 25%, but in many instances closer to 40%. And a lot of them will be focused. So I would like to put our resources into delivering, long-term, permanent, secure tenancies for people. That's not writing anything off that we've maybe done at a budget time on the tax credit. But I know for most renters, just if I could say, Christina, most renters would actually like to have a secure tenancy. That if they can have a long-term lease that's supported by the state, that would be their preference. And a lot of people who are in the rental sector don't want to be there. They want to actually be able to own and buy their own home, and that's what I want to do.
I wanted to kind of put some of the questions because, as I said, I got a lot of them. So one of them was sent in, and is this a first-time buyer? And she wanted to know the first-time buyer's grant, will that be extended into 2022?
Hasn't been decided upon yet. That's the first-time buyer's grant is actually provided for by the Department of Finance. But, I think we made sure we extended it last year and increased it indeed to 30,000. So in a very short space of time, I think we'll be able to give a clear message on that as to whether it will be extended. I hope it will, but that decision hasn't been made quite yet. That's generally made at budget time. But I know that that's something that is a really important support for a lot of first-time buyers. About 22,500 people have actually availed of that first-time buyer's grant, and it does help people, particularly towards their deposit. So we'll know in a short enough space of time how we're going to extend it. I'd like to see it extended, frankly.
A lot of the questions I got in about that grant was from people asking, could it be extended to second-hand homes? Why is it solely being looked at for new builds? Obviously, it's to stimulate supply, but those people are saying that they're stuck. They're still stuck in terms of that deposit.
I get that query a lot from people as well, and I've fed that into the Department of Finance that it is a supply side measure. That's why it's focused on new builds to help increase supply. I think there's an argument as well for some second-hand homes, particularly where if you look at vacant homes that are there, particularly in our regions, and we've done some work on that, where potentially someone might be given a grant to bring an older home back into use if they're going to go and live in it themselves. But yeah, it's a really fair point. Again, it's a scheme that's managed by finance, but we've a lot of interaction with them, and it's certainly something that we'll continue to talk to finance about. But any changes to it, we expect will be done at budget time. It's generally that's the time when that would be done.
A lot of people as well also got in touch with me. They're second buyers, and one gentleman said to me he feels like he's a bit of a forgotten generation. So he's 30-something, has a really good job with his wife. They bought in the last boom, but they got caught in negative equity. And in their case, they're paying USC, inflated taxes, pay astronomical childcare cost, and it just goes on and on. They said that the focus seems to be a lot on first-time buyers, but they said they know countless of their friends that are just stuck in these small homes or small apartments, and there's really no hope of them getting that, the 20% budget or so that they'll need to move on to another home.
Well, I'm glad you've picked that question out, Christina, because I'm acutely aware of lots of people, particularly who bought in the mid-2000s, would have smaller housing units. Their families have grown up and they basically outgrown where they are. Some people left with apartments and are renting family homes, like the accidental landlords of that. I'm going to have some exemptions within the affordable scheme for exactly that cohort of people. Okay, where people, and actually already with the state-backed affordable purchase scheme, the affordable homes through the councils, there is going to be an exemption there and a category for people who can say, well, look, we've outgrown our house size. Here's our family now, to help them move on as well. So I have taken into account also people who may have suffered through the last boom, who've gone through personal insolvency. There will be exemptions there, and for people who may have been married before or with a couple and are divorced and don't own a home at all, but would have been a first-time buyer before. So strictly speaking, wouldn't have been treated as a first-time buyer. So those people that you've mentioned won't be excluded. Obviously, the scheme is focused predominantly on first-time buyers, but there will be exemptions and exceptions, very much along the line of what you've just raised with me here.
Also, I know we've spoken a bit before about short-term lets, and it was something that you told the Journal about before that it was something you were looking at. Obviously, this was when tourism was a lot bigger in the towns and cities than it is right now. But you did say that you were in favour of regulating the platforms, and I did get a few questions about this, saying why haven't we moved on that? Why can't it be illegal to put up a property within those zones where it's prohibited without the planning permission? Obviously, things are lifting today, easing restrictions. We're hoping to get back to some normality. Would now not be a time to move on that?
It would, and we've been working on it. It's with myself and also Minister Catherine Martin. We have a working group together between two because tourism has a big role in this too. I think we should be regulating the platforms, and that would be the most efficient way to do it. So we've over the last number of months been doing quite a lot of work with my colleagues in the Department of Tourism with Minister Catherine Martin on that. And I think now's the time to do it when we don't have a big influx of visitors from abroad, but that will change. Even last year, by the way, particularly in the west of Ireland, it was really difficult. You go to places like Galway and that there was nothing left because of short-term letting. That there's a role for it, but it's about getting the permission and that they're regulated. My department here is engaged with some of the bigger short-term letting agencies like Airbnb. We've looked at what's done in other countries. We've done a lot of work. We're well advanced on this, actually. I hope to be able to talk to you in a matter of weeks, if not months, about this. But I need approval from other departments in government on this. But we're well advanced with work about bringing, robust regulation for the short-term letting sector.
A few other questions that I had in as well. I had a couple from landlords, actually. A few of them saying they were quite good landlords. They had, below market rent for long-term tenants, but they were questioning why, again, back to those investment funds, seem to be paying little or no tax, while they say they're being hammered with the tax that they're being levelled with because of the income they get from rent, and that's pushing them out of the market in terms of the hassle perhaps that's creating. Would it not be more mindful, I suppose, to try and keep those individual landlords in the market rather than relying on these international funds?
It would, Christina, frankly, be much better to keep the individual landlords in play. I think about 86% of landlords in this country own only one or two properties. So most of it is like what people term the mom and pop landlords there that have a good personal relationship with their tenants. We've lost in the last few years about 13,000 of them, and a lot of it is down to tax treatment or regulation, or people decide to move out. They want to be landlords anymore. But I know that's something that is in the programme for government to look at equity of treatment for individual landlords, because there is a private rented market. I think with 300,000 tenancies in it, we're going to need that market. I have later in the autumn, I'm bringing forward, because the rent pressure zones expire at the end of this year. So we're working on a tenancy and rent reform bill at the moment that I'll be publishing in the autumn. Okay, and we're looking at, what would replace RPZs? What will the rental market look into the future? What additional protections we might bring in? And then what we can do to make sure that we keep good landlords that are there too. There's a tax element to that as well, and how income is treated. That's sort of outside my remit. But, we need good landlords in the market. And as I said, the vast majority of them are, and the vast majority of the tenancies that are here in the country are held by those individual landlords who own only one or in some cases two properties.
Just a couple of other questions. A few people were asking about vacant land tax, vacant property, about derelict homes around the country and in their towns, and also large sites that are just being left idle, I suppose, with speculative planning permission. Is there anything in the works to either make, a CPO on those properties, or are you going to get tough, I suppose, with the developers that are leaving a lot of plots of land just underdeveloped?
Yeah, look, the vacant site tax is something that's there. I know the Commission of Taxation is looking at what else we can do in that space, because we need people to use land productively. By the way, the state is the biggest hoarder of land, and the state owns, a sizable chunk of land that can be developed, and that's why I've been prioritising the Land Development Agency. That piece of legislation has been sort of in the ether for a number of years now, and in a short space of months that we've got that into the Dáil, it's past second stage, and I want to have that legislation through by the summer. And why do I want to do that? So we can give the LDA, capitalise the LDA and get them on developing their own ground. Like in Shangana Castle, they'll start this year, just over 500 homes, affordable and cost rental. So the state has a real role to play there in using its land, and we will. But secondly, taxation, vacant site tax, but also like derelict buildings. And I think a lot more can be done, particularly when you go outside of the city of Dublin and the city of Cork into our regional towns and villages. You'll see a lot of homes that are on the main streets and towns and villages just empty. And we've got to be a little bit radical about what we do in that space, about, how can we encourage people to take those homes? Many of those homes are, they've full water connections, electricity, wastewater. They're ready to go with some money could be brought back into use, quite easily. There are some planning issues there as well to be dealt with, but it's a focus on we are looking at that in a very detailed way at the moment. Fundamentally, as I said, to go back to my point though as well, it's to get the state using its land productively. And we're going to see that happen this year, which is good. And I'm glad to see that. And I hope all parties will support the Land Development Agency legislation, because we need to manage our own land better, put it to productive use for our people by delivering affordable public homes on those lands.
Another question I got in was about income caps being looked at. A few questions I did get in were specifically, I suppose, we're talking about investors and the role they can play, but there has been sort of a omission of where the banks are with all this, because a lot of questions were saying, a lot of people were saying that they pay, massive rents, but, they're just being looked at their income, and little consideration is being given to the high rents that they're paying and their ability to pay those mortgages. Is there any work being done with the banks or the central bank rules in terms of looking at, I suppose, a more realistic side of people's ability to pay rather than just, I suppose, their gross income? Because a lot of people obviously have been paying nearly half their monthly wages, so they're well capable of paying a mortgage that would be far less than that.
Yeah. The mortgage rules and the mortgage lending rules is not something that I have input into. It's a central bank, a Department of Finance discussion, but it's something that I have been raising. I think there's a reality that people out there are paying double in rent what they would be if they could get a mortgage. And I've real life instances in my own constituency. I have family and friends that have been in that boat. And actually, if I put it to you, that's one of the reasons why I'm bringing the affordable bill through, because it will actually help people who have been paying rents of up to €2,000 a month be able to get a mortgage that's €1,000 a month. So, those measures are going to help. But in relation to the lending and the macroprudential rules around 3.5 times salary, that's not something that sits under my remit. Banks are supposed to look at, at the history of ability to pay as well. But it's a real issue for people. That's why the affordable measures that I'm bringing forward are going to help. And they'll help bridge that affordability gap for a lot of people. On the lending side of things, that's something that really the central bank have independent remit over the macroprudential rules, But I'm getting on with doing other things that will help a lot of those generation rent people that are stuck paying exorbitant rents, and we want to help them out.
And can I ask maybe just some more personal questions for you as a minister? Obviously we had the departure there of Owen Murphy from politics, and obviously he came in for some very harsh criticism from both the public, the opposition, and indeed yourself when you were housing spokesperson. What do you think, is there anything you wish he had done differently in the last 5 years or so that would make your job a little easier now?
Well, look, I know I get on well, and the Dáil is something where it can be quite, combative, and it can be. I would have been critical of many parts of his housing policy, but I do know he worked very hard trying to deliver change and trying to move things on. I don't think it's for me to say. I think the public decide on what I think, on what they believe a minister should do differently. I think my focus is on actually delivering the government's programme for government and delivering my housing plan. And one of the big focuses has been around the area of homelessness, and really focusing on that, which I've done since I came in last July. And thankfully, we're making progress. We've had an over 40% reduction in child and family homelessness and about just short of 20% overall. still far too high, and we're still, but going in the right direction. So look, I just wish Owen well in his new uh, career and this new part of his life. I know he did his best. I didn't agree with everything he did. What I said was on the record, but on a personal level, I always got on with him. So and most of us do, actually. To be fair, we can kick lumps out of each other in the jaw, but yet we can talk to each other afterwards, and that's a good thing.
I suppose you're dealing with the investments issue now. That's sort of dominating and maybe taking the focus off your affordable housing bill. And we had John Moran, who was the top civil servant at the time under Michael Noonan, who was on the radio last week saying that measure was brought in for a specific thing, and we're almost a decade on, and it should have been dealt with. So do you think, or do you wish that you weren't in over the weekend with the Department of Finance? Do you think?
Yeah. I suppose wishing isn't going to get me anywhere. We're dealing with, look, the housing is never going to be an easy job, and I'm just delighted that I have it, that I can have an opportunity to make a change in that space. But these challenges are there. They're real life issues that have to be dealt with. And we're going to do our level best to deal with that particular one. There will be others, and there are. The whole area of affordability, delivering public homes on public land, tackling our social housing list, and then keeping the focus on driving down homelessness. So, I suppose for me, when you take over as minister, your job is actually to put your stamp on it, to deliver it. What I do think, though, is, and why I'm anxious to bring in the Commission on Housing, is that we do need a longer term view on where housing is going into the future. Can't just be for each government to decide and change tact. That tends to what happens. It's a stop-start scenario. So I will be bringing forward a Commission on Housing that I see can have a longer term view on housing, and that can be trans-governmental effectively. That can, we know what we need to do. We need to be delivering about 33,000 homes per annum, both public and private. And fundamentally, the issue is getting the policies right that can deliver that number, and in as short a space as possible. And that's what we need. That's what we need to do, and that's really what I'm focused on doing.
I suppose it's a kind of, I know Jim Daly, former minister, was working with Owen Murphy about, the older generation, and I had a few questions about where the renters are going to live, when they retire. Is that a concern to you? Is there plans perhaps to look at these retirement villages? It was something that was raised a bit by Owen Murphy in the past about perhaps moving towards that more European model.
Look, it is an issue, particularly for older renters, as renters get older, and then when they retire, their income generally drops by at least half, and how they can afford to pay the rents they're currently paying is going to be a really difficult thing. We need to be providing more mixed developments and mixed units designed for community, which is really what it is. So developments that are mixed between homes and apartments at various different stages. So people don't have to be moving from one estate to another either. That's the medium term thing. But yeah, we do need to be providing more homes for our seniors. And fundamentally, that's about what we're doing on the public housing side for social housing, why we need to be delivering up to 10,000 new build homes per annum to be able to provide that, the supply that's needed for people as they're getting older. We have some brilliant schemes across the country. We just need more of them. And I visited many of them. There are many of them in my own constituency of Dublin Fingal. And it works really well for people. But I think cost rental is going to have a real role in that too, if I could say. This is a new form of housing tenure that is longer term, secure rents, substantially below what the market rents are. And I think as we develop this out at scale, it'll become a whole new form of housing tenure in Ireland for people of all ages, frankly.
And before I let you go, Minister, obviously there was an article there in the Daily Mail on Sunday. A few emails came in to me about it over the weekend with concerns about what stake you might have had in investment funds in the past. I suppose I just wanted to give the opportunity over to you to perhaps clear that up, because it was something that I got a significant amount of concerns about.
Well, basically, I didn't have any stake in any investment fund. I had a single premium investment product that I actually took out with a broker, an insurance broker of mine, going back years, For what it's worth, by the way, it was a small investment. I declared it as you're supposed to do on the register of interest. It was about €30,000, and for what it's worth, I lost more than half of it. And I had no stake, I have no investments in other things. I think, look, that was presented in a certain way that to say that I'd some, graw or for investment funds. Not at all. I think many people, I was fortunate enough at the time to be able to place an investment. Unfortunate enough that I lost more than half of what I had in it, but that's what happened. That's it. So there's really nothing to it whatsoever, and I've no investments in anything actually at the moment. So just so people are very clear on that,
And I'll let you go now, Minister, but I suppose the focus of the last week has been those investment funds, the taxation issues, and what's going to be done about them. You've given a commitment that it will be sooner rather than later. Are we going to have some measures perhaps going to Cabinet? Will we get some progress or news on that tomorrow?
I don't expect to have the actual measures tomorrow at Cabinet. There's a lot of work going on it between finance and ourselves here in housing. But I expect that we will have options to work through at some stage this week. I just want to let people know that we're dealing with it as, and treating it with the urgency and the priority that it absolutely requires. But no, I don't see that we're going to have, that we've settled on our options by tomorrow. I think that we'll be meeting this week on our options. We know, look, this is important. We're treating it urgently. But we need to, whatever we need to bring forward, we need to make sure is doable, is going to have a positive impact as well, and is going to help people. Because fundamentally what it's about is helping those who, want to own their own home, is making sure that the pitch is leveled for them. That's why, going back to it, that I've brought in the affordable measures that I brought in earlier this week. They were somewhat overshadowed by what happened in Maynooth, and that's, that happened. But the fact of the matter is these affordable measures are in place. We want to see them through. We want to get them implemented, and they're going to help many of your readers here own or rent their own home at an affordable rate.
And finally, I suppose a number of your Fianna Fáil colleagues are a bit shaky with a lot of the housing issues coming, back into the fore, and they're feeling the heat in terms of, if we don't make progress on this, if your measures don't work, Fianna Fáil are facing a serious hammering at the next general election. Would you agree?
Look, I think what we're in this. I'm in this position to do the job and to make things better for our people. And in fairness, I think we've had a decent start at that, to put in the policy changes that are needed to be able to improve the situation for many thousands of young people out there who are trying to own their own home, to make an impact on homelessness and to deliver more public homes. And I'm very confident that we're going to make real strides in that area. So, I relish the challenge. My colleagues are very, very supportive, not just in my own party, but in the other two government parties as well. Because fundamentally, this is a housing issue, a societal issue that we have to resolve for our society. It won't be done overnight. I'm minister less than a year. We've had many of these issues that have been around for 8, 9, 10 years or indeed more. So I'm not going to fix it overnight, but we're very focused on bringing measures in that are going to work, that are going to help. My colleagues are very supportive in that regard, but my priority is obviously the people, and to make sure that things improve for them, and that's what we're focused on doing. And I'm very confident that we're going in the right direction in that regard.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Housing Minister Darragh O'Brien. We really appreciate you taking the questions.
My pleasure.